Hi, Debbie. It's great to have you back again, talking about codependence and how we look at all of this with betrayal and partners and addicts and everything else. So, as always, introduce yourself a little bit and then we'll get going. For those of you joining, if you've got questions, put them in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. It can be on whatever we're talking about or anything related to betrayal trauma, betrayal, addiction, how we heal. So,
I'll take it away. um, I am Debbie McRae, and I work at Family Strategies Counseling Center, where we have actually taken the Prodependence model and have applied it to our groups that we run here for the sex addiction and betrayal recovery. The wonderful part of the Prodependence model is that I've kind of done it with the help of Kim Buck, who's been my mentor and who has put together our program for the betrayed partners. And we're actually taking it and applying it. And it's just been a wonderful shift and change to see how it has assisted women in stepping out of the shame, stepping out of being told that they're the problem, and in understanding really the crisis that they're in and some of that betrayal trauma that's happening to them as a result of the experience. I love the fact that it's attachment based. And we are now coming up against right now the holiday season. And I like to bring to this every Friday just what I see coming up in my office. So I like to make it very applicable and hopefully very helpful for those of you that are joined with us today or that those who watch it later. So we've been talking in group the past week, and we're going to kind of continue next week into talking about how do you survive the holidays while you've either just recently experienced betrayal trauma, or even if you're even down the road in your recovery and experiencing betrayal trauma, because holidays and anniversary dates and anything that has any kind of an emotional significance for us can be very, very difficult. So why does a betrayed partner really need to go into the holidays with an understanding that they've got to be extra prepared? Well, I don't know about the rest of you, but the holidays for me are extra stressful anyway. And when you are trying to manage seasonal stress like the holidays, and in the midst of that, you're going through the grief process, you're in a crisis, it makes it even more difficult to manage. So you're already set up and very vulnerable, which means that your window of tolerance is much narrower. So what do I mean by window of tolerance? That is how much stress I can tolerate before my brain goes, I can't stay connected to the prefrontal cortex. And instead, my brain goes into the hijacked mode. It just takes me limbic. I might explode. I might just reach the end of my rope. It might even take me to a point of complete shutdown because I am in fight, flight, or freeze mode. And so it's really important that we understand going into the holiday season that that window of tolerance is already challenged. And so we've got to approach it knowing that, and there's ways that we can do that. Remember that the holidays are linked with memories. They're linked with traditions. They're linked with special moments from the past. And all of these can be distorted and they can be destroyed because of the betrayal trauma. So that in and of itself is a challenge. Many of the betrayed partners go into the holidays thinking to themselves, well, this isn't how it was in the past, or now Christmas is ruined, or all those Christmases that I've experienced before now, they've all been, not even reality in my reality. And what is my reality? So we've got a lot of that going on. And then the holidays also remind us of our dreams and the things how we want life to be. So when I'm experiencing betrayal trauma, what I want life to be isn't necessarily what I'm experiencing. And I may not even know, what my life is going to look like, not only for the holidays, but even in the future beyond that. So there's a lot of challenges. Now, I want you to understand that it's impossible as we come into the holidays to plan for everything that can come up. So my approach is that what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the skills, some of the tools that you can use. So when they do come up, you're prepared. You have things that you can turn to and ways to manage it and ways to get through the holiday season and continue on your own recovery path. It doesn't have to set you back significantly because we want to keep moving forward. So I guess the holidays are your opportunity to take what you're learning in your own recovery and actually apply it in some really difficult situations. So I want you to remember as a betrayed partner that the holidays are going to evoke some really strong emotions. So go into that knowing that you've got contingency plans in place. The reason we want plans is because it provides you with a sense of empowerment, a sense of how you can support yourself or how you can obtain support, and that gives you security. The other thing too that can happen is I remember the first holiday season I went through after all of my betrayal. I really wanted to isolate and shut down. That was my natural instinct, and I did a lot of that. But in those solitary moments when I isolated, I was actually having to deal with even stronger, more difficult emotions. And so it's really important that we have a plan in place so that we can reduce the amount of isolation that we do. And like I mentioned earlier, it also keeps you on track in your own healing recovery. It keeps you moving forward. So let's talk about how do we create a self-care plan. So I'm going to go through just a bunch of different ideas. There's, I think, many more. Those of you that are listening in, if you've got ideas, please share them. Or if you've got a specific challenge and you're trying to figure out how to manage it for this holiday season, please ask questions about that. I want to be here to help you. So the first thing that I want to mention is don't overdo it. I think I have a tendency anyway going into holiday season to want to make it perfect and to overdo it. But remember, when you're in the midst of betrayal trauma, that you are already outside your window of tolerance. Regardless of where you're at in your recovery journey, your window of tolerance is going to constantly be challenged. So going and knowing that, remember, we're going to go in managing it. So emotional breakdowns are going to happen. So that means that I need to approach the holidays different. Like I was telling a client this week, in the past, before my betrayal trauma, I used to look at this long to-do list of things that I was trying to accomplish in the holidays. And I thought to myself, okay, how am I going to manage to get all of this done? Well, I approach life differently now. And I look at my long list of things I have to do. And my first question is, what can I eliminate? What can I simplify? What can I let go of? What can I surrender? What's the most important? And in that process, I highlight those things that to me are more important. So things like family Christmas cards have gone by the wayside. And maybe the perfect neighborhood gifts are something that's store-bought, not homemade or handmade. Or maybe it's that I don't go to certain parties or I don't go around certain people because I no longer feel the need to make everybody happy. So rather than trying to somehow be the super person and accomplish everything, remember, just don't overdo it. Just manage what you can. Eliminate as much as possible. Because remember, betrayal trauma does compromise that normal level of functioning. And so it's harder to even get through those daily tasks. It's more difficult to even handle your typical workload. So we've got to keep that in mind and then add on top of that, just the physical stress of carrying forward and trying to accomplish everything that the holidays require of us, but also remember the emotions that are attached that are very overwhelming as well. The next thing is allow yourself to have and deal with emotions. Just know that they're going to come up. Holidays come with both good and bad emotions. It's just a fact of life. But if you are a betrayed partner, remember you're already dealing with heightened emotions. You're already very hyper aware of all the betrayal that you've experienced. And so you're going to just have to go into the holidays knowing that emotions are going to come up. So we've been working a lot in my groups lately about how do I deal with really difficult emotions? And why do I have emotions? So I want you to think of emotions from that compassionate observer stance that I've talked about in past webinars. And that is, I'm going to step out of judgment regarding emotions. Emotions are just part of the human experience. And so I need to allow myself to have those emotions. And I need to be able to learn to tolerate feeling those emotions. And so we talk in group about, first of all, I know I'm in a very difficult, distressing emotion because my body typically tells me. The interesting thing about emotions is we feel it on a physiological level first. It feels distressing. And then we usually put a label to it, we identify it. So once you notice something coming up in your body, stop and check in and see, what am I experiencing in this moment? What's the emotion? And where am I holding on to it in my body? And then from that point, there's several things that we can do. One of the things that we can do is we can breathe. And I like to notice where it's at in my body. I identify why it's there. And then I kind of take a pause and I just start doing, for me, my slow, steady, repetitive breathing. I call it circle breathing. And so in it, I am just finding that nice natural rate. I'm getting myself calmed. And even for me, I might even do a simple visualization where I imagine that emotion is just, as I breathe in, it's just moving down through my body. So with each breath, it's going a little lower. I am just letting it move through my body. And for me, I imagine that it's pouring out the bottoms of my feet and I'm sending it deep into the earth, where I'm going to put it into an imaginary vault and I'm going to lock it and shut it. While I'm doing my meditation, I also ask myself some different questions about that distressing emotion that has come up. I believe that emotions come up for a reason. And so I like to be very aware. And I might even ask myself, okay, why is this emotion coming up? What can I learn from this emotion here in this moment? Perhaps it's something like, maybe there's been a boundary that's violated. And so I need to learn maybe to have more clarity and to speak up more, maybe to go back and redefine my boundaries. Maybe it's trying to just tell me to stop, that I'm doing too much, that I'm on overload, and it's time for self-care. So I like to ask that emotion, okay, you're showing up for a reason. Anger, you're here. You're trying to move me forward, because to me, emotions are nothing but energy in motion. You want me to do something. So what is it that I need to do differently? Maybe I need to do it in a healthier way. So is it reestablish boundaries? Is it do more self-care? What can I learn from this? And sometimes we know that anger, there might be some emotions underneath that, right? Our anger is kind of hiding what I call those deeper emotions. So maybe there's sadness. So allowing ourselves to feel the sadness. So it might be we do need to cry and let ourselves cry. Or maybe we do need to journal and kind of get those emotions out of our body onto paper rather than holding on to them. We just don't want to repress or stuff or ignore emotions. I'm a firm believer in that connection between our emotions, our mind, and our body, and that our body holds on to things. So we want to think about when emotions show up, they're there to teach us, we can learn from them, and then actively do something with them. The next thing to include in your holiday self-care plan is come up with a self-care routine. I know that oftentimes the holidays, we've got huge to-do lists. There's so many things we want to accomplish. But first and foremost, I want you to put on your oxygen mask first. And so our routines can change through the holidays. It might be that now kids are home from school. It might be that we're traveling. It might be we're not even staying in our own home. We're visiting somewhere else. But in the midst of that, think about, what can I do that's part of my normal routine that I can consistently keep in place? So think about what's manageable. What can I do to maintain my good self-care? So think about starting each day with just a simple grounding exercise. Whether it is just some daily affirmations and breathing for a few minutes, whether it's going outside. For me, I love sitting on the back porch with a nice warm beverage and just maybe watching the sun come up and just tuning into my five senses, what I'm smelling and seeing and hearing and feeling with my physical body, and that drink that I'm tasting. Maybe it's 15, 20 minutes of meditation every day. Maybe for you, it's prayer or journaling, but something that gets me grounded in the here and now to start off my day. I think on a daily basis, you need to do something where you move your body. So whether that is something like maybe you've got an exercise routine, maybe you go out and walk, maybe you go to the park with your children and play on the playground with them or swing in the swings. Maybe it's yoga and just going to YouTube and finding a great yoga exercise to do. Or maybe it's just doing your breathing, something to move your body every day. And again, it doesn't have to be elaborate. It can be very simple, but I want you to think about supporting your physical health. I also think that it's a good idea to ask family and friends to support you in your self-care routine, making them aware of that, right now, mom needs some time out and I'm going to go to my room and I am going to work on just maybe taking a little rest, or I'm going to go ground myself, or I'm going to put myself into timeout so I can do some self-care. So I need you guys to allow me that time. Even let the betraying partner know I'm going to be doing some good self-care. So that means you might need to step in some areas and help me. Would you be willing to do that? So again, I like to go back to the 4 areas where we want to really focus on in our routines. And that is, what am I doing to support myself physically each day? What am I doing to support myself spiritually and feed my spirit each day? What am I doing each day to support myself emotionally? And so for me, that is, I'm going to work on taking care of myself. And lastly, relationally, I need to make sure I'm connecting as part of my self-care routine with somebody each day. If it's not my betraying partner, if I can't connect there, then I need to connect with somebody who's there to support me, which leads me into the next area, which is we have got to create a support system during the holidays. So when we are experiencing betrayal trauma, many of us, myself included, we feel very alone. I used to say I would feel like I was on an island all by myself and life was going on around me and nobody could understand what I was experiencing. The same is true when we are dealing with the holidays. We might oftentimes feel like we are so alone in this. And so maintaining connection with your support persons are really, really vital. So whether it's that trusted friend, the one that I said drops the compassionate truth bombs when you need them to, or provides the wise wisdom, or the one who can hold space, or maybe it's your group members if you're in a healing group, maybe reaching out to them. I love the fact that my groups text message each other and Marco Polo each other, and oftentimes they're processing situations that are coming up with each other while they're outside of group. They are so supportive. Or maybe for you, it's making sure you get in to see your therapist throughout the holidays, that the holidays don't overtake the importance of getting in and working either weekly or bi-weekly or however often you need to go in so that you can maintain that support. So I say identify at least 1 to 3 people that you can reach out to via text, email, Marco Polo, phone, or someone who will meet up with you in person. I also like the fact that you can identify maybe what person will help you for what thing. So I've often told the women in my group, so let's say you've got that friend I used to have a friend that I called her my devil's advocate, right? I would go in with emotions, and I'm so emotional and I'm in my distorted perceptions because I'm under stress, I'm in crisis. And she, in a very loving and gentle way, could provide kind of the logic and help me, first of all, calm down and help me know that I was going to be okay. And then she had a very gentle and loving way to kind of guide me into maybe looking at things a little clearer. So I appreciated that. I had that friend that I called, she was my ugly cry friend. So when I needed to go to somebody where I could just really be myself and say what I needed to say and show up really vulnerable, she was somebody I felt comfortable with in letting her just hug me and hold me when I cried. And I needed that in that moment. Or maybe I just need that friend who will go to exercise class with me and get me there because I don't want to go alone. And so that was my friend who would call me up and say, I'm coming to pick you up. I'll be there at 7 a.m. And then after we would go exercise, she would just sit with me in the car and just let me talk and listen. And so identify who you need and identify what they can help you with. I think that's a really, really great way to know who do I go to when certain situations arise. The next thing that I also tell my clients to do is to rely on their first aid kit. So as part of our program, the women put together a first aid kit. And in that first aid kit, they put tools and items in there that assist them in grounding, and it supports them in moments of crisis. So put together things that you know are going to help you. My clients will have things in there like inspirational quotes, pictures of their family and children that are grounding, notes that have been written to them by people who love them. They might have even written a letter to themselves that reminds them of what to do during a difficult time. The same letter to yourself reminds you of your own worth and your own journey and how you can do hard things. I've told my clients put together your like little list of bullet points of here's what you do when you're limbic, right? Number 1, do this. Number 2, do this. Because when I'm limbic, remember, I am not connected to that front part of my brain. So logic and reasoning is out the window. So be very clear. I had one group member, I loved what she did in her first aid kit. On every item in there, she put a little reminder note of here's how you use it. Because she knew that in that moment when she was limbic, she would forget why she put it in there. So whether it's something like lotion, which provides that tactile touch and the smell, or it's sensory putty, or it's worry stones, or it's essential oils, or it's chocolate or sour candy, or it's your reminder or of things to do, who to call for what, whatever works for you to help ground you and bring you in back into the present moment. So again, anything that really engages your 5 senses. Another thing that I found is helpful as part of your toolkit is maybe you put together on your phone your list of music that is soothing. So create a playlist of maybe music that works for you. Maybe it's a playlist of guided meditations. Maybe it's putting on your phone easy to reach podcasts that you have found are really easy or very regulating rather. Maybe it's a schedule of the groups that we have here on sex and relationship healing. So you know what day there's a group and who you can go to. So there's lots of things you can do. Have it at your fingertips. Make it easy to get to in the moment. So another area is identify your boundaries. And we just have come off talking about boundaries the last couple of times we've met. So we're going to talk about just 2 specific areas. We're not going to get too deep into this, but let's talk about maybe boundaries you put into place with a betraying partner. And then we're going to talk about some talking boundaries that you can put into place. So with your betraying partner, it's really important that as you approach the holidays, that you sit down and in a very grounded, regulated way, share and be very clear about what you are willing and not willing to do during the holidays, especially regarding maybe things you've done in the past. Maybe it's visiting family members, or maybe it's doing certain tasks, or maybe it's topics of conversation. But really being clear on, I've got to have kind of some boundaries put into place around the holiday so that my window of tolerance is not going to become real narrow just in the moment. Also, discuss with your partner the fact that my needs are going to change, right? I might not know. One day I might wake up and everything might trigger me. And so that day, my capacity to go places and do things and be around people might change. So, how can you express it? Put some boundaries into place. And again, I love the talking boundary and using something like the talking boundary where you are sharing in a very logical way. Here's what I'm seeing and hearing, and here's the stories I'm into, or here's what I'm thinking about this. Here's the emotions that are coming up for me, and here's my need around this. Here's how I need to handle it, or here's what's going to work best for me. And so when we do that, we come at it from a very grounded, a more logical place. And so we can talk about hard things. Also, use the timeout boundary. That's really key. Like I said, emotions run high during the holidays. So if you know you are outside your window of tolerance, the minute you're emotional, the minute you're feeling it in your body, that's when you call the pause or the timeout and take that moment to go get grounded. Remember, it takes the brain at least 20 minutes to get back connected to the front part of the brain, to get out of that fight, flight, or freeze, out of the limbic system, and back into prefrontal cortex. And I think 20 minutes is if you're really good at it. Honestly, I think it might take a little longer. But if you do call a pause, remember the rules of the timeout are that you don't just walk away. I like to plan a time you're going to get back together to continue the conversation, whether it's in 20 minutes, an hour, later in the day, 24 hours from that point in time. But the important part is that within 24 hours, we have to have readdressed it and we have dealt with the issue that we were discussing. Another boundary to consider is physical touch boundaries. During the holidays, what kind of physical touch feels comfortable for you as the betrayed partner? And especially when you're out and about in public or around family members, right? Discuss that. Can we hold hands? Is that not allowed? Are hugs allowed? What is allowed? What does that look like? Because that can be very triggering in the moment if you don't expect it. So that although it might be a very difficult conversation, it's a very vital one. If you're traveling out of town and staying with friends or family, sleeping arrangements need to be discussed so that you can kind of figure out contingency plans. And it might be that rather than staying in somebody's home this year, it might be you go to a hotel instead, so that you do have the ability to adjust your sleeping arrangements. So think ahead. Also, what's your general energy level? It might be, I'm just not going to do as much this year. And I might not be able to go to your office party with you. So how can we create safety around that? Or maybe, the partner who's in recovery might even consider, taking a friend who's an accountability friend with them to create safety, or whatever works for you. Again, this is something that needs to be negotiated between you and the person who's in recovery. So I like to think of, okay, what is my capacity in this moment? What's my energy level? So think of the bucket principle. Think about, how full is my bucket in this moment? Do I have enough to give? Can I keep giving, right? Or do I need to stop and fill my bucket? Oftentimes, we, especially as women, and many of us mothers, we give a lot. And so I think about 2 buckets and I'm giving to the other buckets all the time. And am I getting anything back, or do I need to stop and fill my own before I can give some more? So use that analogy. That's really, really important. The next area, like I mentioned, was maybe communication boundaries. And just very briefly, sometimes people want to ask a lot of questions, especially if things look different during the holidays. And so it doesn't mean that because they've asked questions, you have to answer them and give all the details. So just come up with some talking points. What am I going to say if somebody asks me, maybe why, things look different, or maybe they're aware of the fact that we are having relationship difficulties, that there has been this betrayal. And so it doesn't mean you have to talk about everything. I remember that there came a point in time where I had a talking boundary that I would just basically say, thank you so much for your concern. I can tell that you really care about me, but I need to tell you that I have chosen not to spend a lot of time talking about it because I find that it just makes it really difficult for me, kind of puts me back into my trauma. Or you might say, you know what? Here's what I'm willing to share, and just share a little bit. Or maybe it's like, it's really difficult for me right now. So I'd rather not talk about it. Or here's what I need instead in this moment. So think about that. The last thing I want to end on, two concepts, gratitude and self-compassion. The gratitude piece is every day have a gratitude practice. I love the 3 good things exercise. This is from Martin Seligman. He is a happiness researcher. He's from Positive Psychology Approach. He's one of the founders of that. And he's done a lot of studies on this. And at the end of the day, you journal 3 good things. It takes 5 minutes. The research shows that there's an increase in happiness and a decrease in depression by simply doing this practice. So I'm going to write down in my journal 3 good things that I experienced throughout the day. So what it does is the next day, it shifts my awareness because I'm going to start looking for the 3 good things I'm going to be journaling on later in the day. So I love that shift in perspective. So think about that, because sometimes it's very difficult in the middle of betrayal trauma to think about the good that's happening, but there is good there. And so I love that simple thing. What it does is it helps us shift our brains from that part where we're in that threat, right? It takes me from there, the threatening part of my brain reconnects me to my prefrontal cortex and helps me in the here and now, because when I'm limbic, my brain wants to take me to the past and project me into the future. So that gratitude practice. And then self-compassion. Remember that holidays are complex, betrayal trauma is overwhelming, and there are no easy answers oftentimes, and that life changes from moment to moment. Go into the season knowing that you're going to make mistakes, and it's okay. Go into the season knowing that you're going to have triggers, and it doesn't mean that you're not healing. It doesn't mean that you're doing things wrong. It's just a part of healing. And so treat yourself with that love, with that kindness, and that self-compassion. So come up with your self-compassion mantras or your self-compassion statements. And if you need to, do the cross-body hug or the tapping or the butterfly hug, right? And just take a moment and remind yourself, that this is a moment of suffering. This is a difficult time. And, there are a lot of women out there who can relate to what I'm going through. They've had betrayal trauma. And so I'm not alone in this. May I remind myself that I am doing the best I know how to do, and that I'm not always going to feel this way, that I do have hope for a better tomorrow, and that the fact that I'm just putting one step forward at a time, that's enough. And may I give myself the love that I need. And then I always tell my clients, take a nice big deep breath and just feel that love for yourself and let it go. So anyway, I hope those are some helpful ideas and things to help get you through the holidays, because they're difficult.
Super helpful. And we're going to end. I'm going to ask you to do that again, because that's such a meaningful thing. I'm tearing up. So,
yeah.
So,
would you want me to go through those steps again?
Well, just that last little piece of the I'm at the end. I'm going to ask you to close us with that particular
thing.
thing.
At the end of today,
so I think yes,
we're going to go through. I love
we're going
that
to do
idea.
it. So, yeah.
Love that idea.
That's how we're going to pull ourselves together. So I wrote down. So I have a question. I'm going to start with a question, because you talked about I love the circular breathing idea, but you talked about, and then you put the. What I heard, and I want to clarify, you put the emotions in a vault and lock it up, but then you also talk about that the emotions aren't bad, and we, we have to experience them. So, so clarify for me, what would I be putting in the vault, and what would I just be?
Okay. So what I do, this is a somatic awareness exercise that I do. So for me, let's say I am experiencing high levels of anxiety. My anxiety is triggered, and it's showing up for a reason. So one of the things I will do is I will identify it. I feel anxiety in my chest. So I start breathing into that, right? And with each breath that I take, right? And I kind of do my slow circular breathing. So, and what by that I mean, when I teach it to my clients, I have them imagine they're tracing a circle. And so as they're breathing in, they're tracing to the top of the circle. As they're breathing out, they're tracing to the bottom of the circle. And so we breathe and we do that so that it's as relaxed as possible while still feeling comfortable. Then what I do is I imagine I'm breathing into my chest, right? That nice circular breathing. And I'm kind of sitting with it and I'm trying to figure out, why is it here, right? What possibly triggered it? I'll ask myself, what just happened? What was I just telling myself in this moment? What could this possibly be a result of, right? What can I learn from you right now? And then as I'm doing that, I imagine that as I'm breathing with every breath, I'm just going to let that emotion begin to work through my body. So if it started in my chest, with every breath, I'm letting it just move down lower and lower and lower and lower in my body until I imagine it flowing out the bottoms of my feet. And as I'm doing that, right, I'm imagining it going deep into the earth, and it's going to go into a vault, and we're going to have the vault shut so that I've contained my anxiety. It's a form of a containment exercise.
Okay. Okay. All right.
And
That's
so then that way, I'm not only working with my body, right? I'm letting my body feel it. I'm letting it move through my body, but I'm also working on, in that moment, as I calm and relax myself, I'm also trying to move myself from possibly that limbic part of my brain up to the front part of my brain to prefrontal. So even if you can't figure anything out about the emotion and you just want to clear it from your body, then just do the breathing, let it move through your body, and let it go out the bottoms of your feet and into the vault or into a container. If that's what you can do, that's a great exercise in and of itself.
That's so helpful. And I actually told I was talking to somebody today, but I told them, I said, triggers are going to happen. So having a plan, like you talked about the first aid kit. I love that, like labeling it like it's a first aid kit. When do you need a first aid kit? When there's a situation, you need to, so I love that. And that, what am I going to do with it? I think that is so helpful. I hadn't even thought about, which I should have, but okay, if you're traveling, so you have your little routine, and I don't mean to minimize, but like I have my little routine in the morning. These are the things I do, even, before I get out of bed. I've already got my, meditation app on. I do these things. Now I'm at somebody else's house, or I'm traveling, and the schedule gets all wonky. And so to take ownership of, this is what I need to do for me before I go meet the world and everybody else. I think that's a great reminder. Like, I still have to practice good self-care, even with, things different. I liked when you talked about, there's a lot, I've got 2 pages of notes, but the physical touch, I think it's easy for the betrayer to want to make it look like everything is fine. And so I'm going to, we're going to hug, in front of the family, because they, and so having that really clear boundary of what's okay and what's not okay, both for communicating, but also for that, we want to give the appearance, so I'm just going to, I'm going to give you a little squeeze, so I think it's really a great idea. With so much of this, it's about, thinking it through and having a plan, having communication about what, here's what we're going to do. Here's what's okay and what's not okay. For and this is this year, we'll talk about the holidays next year. I, like you, I have the really long list, and I've gotten way better the last few years of going, what are my priorities? What is the absolute, I have to do these things, and then the Christmas cards or whatever, it's like, okay, those are just not going to get done this year, and it's okay. I am not a failure. And I look at Facebook with a huge grain of salt, that, like, yes, there's all this magnificent stuff that's posted on there. I don't have to compare myself to the, Facebook image of somebody else's life. I don't know their circumstances, doesn't matter. For me this year, this is what I'm going to get done, and it's going to be okay. So, and I happened to watch, Kelly Clarkson's, Christmas special the other night. And she has these really, she's had a challenging year, and she talked about it. And I was like, oh, how refreshing to have somebody talk about it being a painful Christmas and it being, different. And she was on national television giving herself permission, and the rest of us permission, to go, it's okay. And I was like, wow, that was it was a meaningful thing to me, not promoting Kelly or not, but just
Mm.
to have somebody not have it be all, sparkly lights and, perfect, it was real. I like that. Oh, the playlist I wanted to mention on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. We actually have a playlist, and we have, podcast, sex, love, and addiction. But you know what? You may want to go listen to some podcast about something completely not addiction. I listen to all the, unsolved murders and all of, that's my,
Yes.
that's my little, thing. So, but it's a very, it's very, it takes me away, and I'm focused on that, and it takes me away from me for a little bit, and it's a good recreational break. So it doesn't have to be just about addiction, just about healing, so that was my thought on that. So there was one other thing. I wrote so many things down. Yeah, the energy level, like the ebbs and flows. And so to just like, today I might have a lot of energy, tomorrow I might not, and that's okay. So that whole gratitude and self-compassion. I think the biggest thing is we have to be compassionate for ourselves. And I think then we can also be kinder to others too, and just understand that, they may, it wasn't that clerk was trying to be nasty to me. It's like, oh my gosh, they're overwhelmed and everything else. And me just being able to be present and a little more compassionate to myself gives me the grace to be able to be more compassionate to others as well. So it is a difficult time, but there's joy in it too. And if I look for the joyful things to have the gratitude about, I can find those, or I can look at how I failed to get whatever done. Just doesn't matter. So, but.
And you talking about joy reminds me of something. Oftentimes with my clients, and when they're coming up to holidays, they're coming up to certain significant, dates during the year, whether it's wedding anniversaries, birthdays, it might even be around discovery or disclosure days. I tell them, do something to create a positive memory. So maybe do something different now than the ordinary. I had one client who she planned a family trip to Disneyland on the anniversary day of discovery. And
that's a brilliant idea. Yeah.
And so you can do that with the holidays. Create positive, joyful memories, which means that maybe you do something a little different. And so I love that. I think that's another great way to deal with some of these really difficult times when it's hard to feel joyful when you're experiencing betrayal trauma. Oftentimes, I'm not going to lie, a lot of times it's just about, I'm going to survive this. For me, it was, if I can just get the presents wrapped this year, then I'm going to feel successful. And that's, I was.
And a gift bag is okay. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Lower your expectations.
Tie it in a red tablecloth. It works great too. I've learned all these tricks, but
yeah,
you're right.
Yeah. And it's just okay. It just doesn't have, so yeah. And it really is more about like, can I be present with this person in this moment? I know what it was. I loved that you had different friends, like the devil's advocate friend. I was like person came to mind. I was like, oh, that's my person. And then the touchstone, the things I always have my chip.
Yeah.
And then for years I carried around, this one's a replacement, but I can't even read this. The font's so small, but I know what it says anyway. But I had that in my purse all the time. And it talks about the 12 steps. It has the serenity prayer on it. it's like, and like, even if I just was reaching in my purse and I felt it, there was that, that moment of like, yup. But if I had to reach in my purse to touch it, like that, it was still there. So I think, the more we plan, sorry, dog in the background, the more we plan, the more we have a plan to handle the things that life brings us. It just is. So we have a question. This person says, I have family members that make what I consider passive aggressive remarks to me. Other than ignoring it, confronting the nasty remark will only make it worse. Is there something I'm doing to, oh no, is there something I'm doing to cause these hurtful remarks or some way to avoid them?
Okay, number one, I don't believe you are the cause of somebody else's remarks. So,
Ditto.
And that's what you're dealing with. I want to just say is very difficult, because I know if you're like me, I don't like to create more disconnection, more contention, and I don't want to make things worse. And so it is a fine line. And again, it goes back, I think, to boundaries, but how do I express those boundaries? And so let's just kind of talk through this, because I'm thinking this through off of the top of my head. And if anybody out there who's listening has some really great, healthy ideas, please share. But first of all, I think you need to identify who those people are. And I'm not sure if they're your family members, your spouses or partners' family members, if they're, family friends, but you might want to consider one boundary we can set is how much time am I willing to spend around them, right? And so that might be something that needs to change. And in what context will I spend time with them? Meaning, is it going to be one-on-one? Or is it part of a group where I can keep my distance? So, I know that there's certain people that are going to have a tendency to say things to me that sometimes it hits me out of left field and I have no idea how to respond in the moment. It might take me so limbic. I'm literally, for me, when I go limbic, I go more shut down. I kind of like freeze. It's like, oh man, because I don't know what to do. So, think about that. Can I maybe set some boundaries around how much contact I will have and in what ways I will have contact with them? Ignoring it can be a boundary. However, I tell my clients that sometimes ignoring things without putting words to it is not a boundary. So sometimes we do need to put words to it, and it can be simple. So I'm going to share with you something my daughter taught me. And this I have found when people say nasty things works so well. And it came from a story that she shared with me of she was in a Twitter group and they were bashing on somebody, this group of women. And my daughter is very pro supporting women. And it really disturbed her. And she responded to the group by saying, "It really hurts my heart that you guys would say those words." And immediately the group shifted and everybody realized what they were doing and backpedaled. And so sometimes I think when somebody says something nasty to us or very aggressive, sometimes when we say, when I hear you say, and then repeat exactly what they said, just say, you know what? I tell myself that really hurts my heart, right? It makes me really sad. And so then I make the vulnerable request, would you please be considerate about what you say to me or what you're asking? And sometimes that's what you say and you walk away, right? Or if you're on the phone, you say, gotta go, right? And get off the phone. You've got to plan ahead. You've got to know what your words are going to be. So in the moment, I think it's okay to say the words you're using really hurt my heart. And I would rather you not speak to me that way. And that's okay. So I think if anything, right, the accountability there on your part is that maybe it's okay for you to speak up and say, here's my boundary, and to figure out a way that feels for you authentic, it feels comfortable, and it feels doable. Okay. Now, there might be times where if people are extremely, passive aggressive, because to me, passive aggressive can be just as damaging as aggressive, then it might just be that you're going to have to maybe eliminate people for a while, eliminate being around them. And I am not one that just does that, just quickly, but it might just be while you're doing your healing and you're in that healing space, the people you need around you. And those people need to be supportive. They need to be loving and kind, and they need to be there for you. They need to be your cheerleaders. So I believe in putting cheerleaders around us. So hopefully that's helpful. Do you have any other ideas, Tammy, on that?
Well, it is such a hard thing, and passive aggressive, like, I think is
Mm.
just cruel, because I mean,
Mhm.
if you're aggressive, then it's out there, but the passive aggressive is cruel and hurtful. I guess that my biggest thought was, you are not what they are acting like you are. So I guess I wanted to empower you to know that their remarks are coming from a brokenness within them. Because if there was really an issue, if they were a stand-up person, they would be going, yeah, Debbie, I have an issue with this, or it concerns me, or whatever. We'd be having a conversation about it. But those passive aggressive, comments, are very hurtful, and me making those to Debbie, it's easy to take it as, oh, I'm not worthwhile, or what's going on, or like you were like, what am I doing? It's not you, it's that person. And I suspect that there's poor ulterior motives with it. There are a lot of people make, slicing comments in order to make themselves feel better. It doesn't work, but that's where it comes from, or deflecting. So I am a big one on limiting my time with people that are not a positive force in my life, and some of them are family members. And so there are family members that it just it doesn't work well for either of us, and I think mutually acknowledge that. And so if we're in a room, we're there, but we're probably sitting towards the other sides of the room, and that's all fine. It just is fine. But I would encourage you not to take their remarks to heart, to know who you are. And I know it's easier said than done, but that's them, not you.
Yeah, let me do a little teaching moment here too, especially in regards to people's remarks that they make to us. And I actually learned this in my own therapeutic process and going to therapy. And that is, there's something that that my therapist taught me about perception projection. And that is that, we all look at life through our own set of lenses. And I've mentioned this previously that, because I'm female, I've got a lens because of my childhood experiences, because of my education and, my belief system, right? How I look at life gets filtered through all of these lenses that I am looking at life through. And then I come to judgments and conclusions based on what I'm seeing. And, there's a lot of variations and variables there. And so oftentimes when I tell somebody there's something, I'm judging them. Remember, I am just taking how I'm seeing it and I'm saying, you are how I'm seeing you. It doesn't mean it's true. So my therapist would tell me this. She would say, Debbie, if you think it, and you feel it, it's really about you. And so whenever somebody says something to me that's passive aggressive or unkind, how I have reframed it and I looked at it as, you know what? They're really sharing with me something that's going on within them. This is more about them than it is about me. And so oftentimes I will replace the word you this and you that with I this and I that. And it kind of gives me an idea of maybe what they're thinking, how they're perceiving things, how they're judging things. And that's been a way for me to kind of stay out of getting triggered and having it really hurt me even on a deeper level. So hopefully that's helpful. That's just a way that, I'm able to kind of understand maybe what that person's saying to me, especially if it's not kind and it's passive aggressive. And it sounds to me like some of those nasty remarks are that.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, if I'm in a direct conversation, I probably, like where it kind of calls for a response. I love
Mhm.
if you can be brave and say, this hurts my heart. I think that
Mhm.
that's a really, and you know what, if it's not well received, oh well, you've taken care of you, and I think that that's meaningful. To me, interesting, or okay, I hear you. Oh, and then move on. I'm and I don't know if this is good or bad. I'm very good at flipping the conversation, and being curious about something with them, or whatever. And suddenly they want to talk about themselves, and it kind of shifts things and it's gotten me out of uncomfortable situations. Like I said, I'm not sure if it's good or bad, and maybe there's no good or bad. Maybe it's just a technique that I use occasionally, with certain situations. So but my big thing is, please don't take that to heart. Their comments, and I'm always troubled if it's family member, and there are lots of toxic families. There's reasons and motivations. If it's the betrayer's family, there's more reasons and motivation. So, I forgot what the saying is, but it's family. We're related by blood and relationships and stuff. But the people I really care about, the people whose opinions I care about, I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to, like, I already know how they feel, and it's like you talk about your devil's advocate. You've got your people. Those are the people whose opinions matter to me. Somebody that I don't respect, don't care, they're entitled to their opinion. It's okay. So.
Yeah, and I want to circle back around to that curiosity, because I do like that. Oftentimes when people do make a passive aggressive remark, now this has to come from a place when I'm really grounded. I can't be limbic when I do this. And so going with curiosity, well, I'm curious why you would say that, right? And I love that curiosity just coming in, because oftentimes when you just approach them that way, now all of a sudden they've got to kind of defend their remark. And the more they talk, then the more they realize, what they've said is not kind, maybe even not true. And so I tell my clients oftentimes, you know what, just go back with curiosity and say, I'm curious, why would you say that? And just sit back and be quiet and listen. Right?
Yeah.
And
but I have too many people in my
helpful.
life. Yeah. And with a person who wants to be engaged and wants to grow and all that stuff works. There are some people that are just, they will continue to be nasty. So, and I don't know what your situation is. So I think you really have to take the temperature, be true to yourself. What is going to make you feel like I did what I needed to do for me in this situation. So,
Yep.
and having support. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also, right, like you said, some people, they need to earn the right, to not only our vulnerability, but I think to even have us in their lives to some degree, right? That comes through respect and kindness and, all those kinds of things. It goes back to the bucket principle, that in my life, I'm choosing to have relationships where I'm giving to them positive, wonderful things into their bucket, and they're also giving back to me. So I'm having this reciprocal, right, positive flow back and forth. So that's what I have chosen in my life and my work to work on doing, is making sure that that's part of, the people I surround myself with.
I agree. So we're to time. So if you would take us through that.
I will.
I love
so
that.
Depending on whatever feels more comfortable to you, for me, it depends on the day. Today, I feel more this way, where I'm giving myself a hug, and I'm just going to take you through the steps. So in your mind, you can just change the words, but I'm just going to take you through in this moment. So in this moment, may I just recognize that this is a moment of suffering, and that as the holidays approach, that I'm under a lot of stress, and I might have a lot of emotions and a lot of triggers, and that it's really hard, and it's okay for it to be really hard. And I'm not alone in this. There are other people, other women just like me, who are experiencing betrayal trauma and having to work through the holidays. So I'm not alone in this. And so I be kind to myself. May I remind myself that I'm doing the best I know how to do, and that I have the ability and the capacity to handle whatever comes my way. And may I just remind myself that as I put one step forward, one step in front of the other each day, that that's all I need to do. And that regardless of any mistakes that I make, it's okay for me to be human. It's okay for me to be perfectly imperfect. And that's good enough. And take a nice big deep breath and let it go. And then go out there and survive the holidays.
That's right. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Debbie.
You are so welcome.
I'm hoping you all have a grounded and meaningful holiday. Keep coming back. We have lots of things to connect to help get you through the holidays too. And we'll be back in January. So,
Yes.
okay.
So,
All right. Thanks,
all right.
everybody.
See you.
Bye-bye.